Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and made a video earlier today in which a subscriber or a viewer, I don't know which, posted a comment, and he's basically had to turn me talking about not using pro bodybuilders as examples of how most of you should train into a personal insult against his favorite bodybuilder, in this case Ronnie Coleman, saying, well, you're saying Ronnie Coleman's ignorant. So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, do a little bit of crafting, and let's talk about this. Alright guys, what people need to understand when we're talking about stuff of trying to teach people how to train safely, how to train correctly, how to get their results without injuries, without problems, and take an intelligent approach to training, it is not a personal attack upon your favorite bodybuilder to say, hey, you probably shouldn't train like them. I never said anything bad about Ronnie Coleman there. But what I will say is that why would you want to use someone as an example of training who basically has broken their back for the final few years of their competitive endeavors, had so much nerve damage in their back that their lats wouldn't work correctly and everything else. This is someone who has basically ripped his own body apart. Are you really sure? Are you really sure that's the example that you want to use for your personal training? Think about that for a minute. All right, he has one of the most, he was one of the biggest men ever. The guy's probably put on more muscle than just about any other guy out there with a couple exceptions in his career. No one's denying that. From a powerlifting perspective, the guy was amazingly strong. All right, so he wasn't just really, I don't even view him as a bodybuilder. The guy competed in powerlifting too and did amazingly well, which is a sport I've competed in. All right, no one's going to take that away from him. I can't take that away from him. I'm not hating there. But what I am saying is, why in the world do people want to use these people as examples of how they should train? People who have destroyed themselves, people who are very insanely genetically gifted, to the point to where a lot of things that they do that work for them may not work for you. All right? It's like also like saying if you were to go train like your favorite football player, that you would be as good at football as they are, and that maybe you should implement their exact training protocols just because they're your favorite, they were one of the best. But in the real world, that doesn't always work. Think about that. Do you think any good coach out there anywhere in the world who has trained a Super Bowl winner for whatever position it happens to be, your favorite football player, if you're a younger football player, do you think he would put you on their exact routine? Do you think their routine stays the same through the year? Or do you think that the best athletes and the best coaches adapt their training on a month-to-month, day-to-day, and year-to-year basis based upon their personal individual needs and what they are trying to accomplish? I think it's the latter. And so if you were to implement that person's training protocol they were using at any given time, when your structure is different, your current needs are different, your level of experience is different, then yes, that would be insanely ignorant, wouldn't it? What if they're trying to work on something specific to them hitting someone on a playing field when they've found a weak link in their personal kinetic chain, their strength and conditioning coach has to make them better at what they do at the pro level, and they're addressing a sport-specific concern or a sport-specific weakness? Would you personally go do that same thing if you weren't in their exact position? Or would you run something more simplistic? Would you run a more generalized program if you were not anywhere near NFL yet? Of course, you would run something more generic. A lot of their training, once they're pros, is going to be specifically geared towards maximizing their strengths and minimizing their weaknesses at any given moment. And that's going to be subject to change based upon the best coaches observing them. And these people have the best coaches. If you're winning a Super Bowl, I can promise you, you've got a fantastic, amazing coach who is strength and conditioning coach, who is watching what you do, who is helping you fine-tune what you do so that you can continue to be the best. And if you replicate what they're doing at that given point, it would actually be extremely ignorant on your part. Why would you do that? No, you would have a coach who tells you how to achieve what they were doing to get there eventually. But this assumption that people have that if they emulate the training style or training method of someone in some endeavor that they consider to be the best, when it's a specialized protocol for their specific needs, their genetics, and their weak points at any given time, why would you replicate that? Why would you expect it to give you the same results? You shouldn't. Furthermore, again, when you're dealing with someone like Ronnie Coleman, do you really think his training approach at any given time was the number one reason he was the best at what he did? Or do you think it's the fact that he is an extremely gifted genetic freak for all purposes? Because look at the amount of size the guy had. Do you see other guys who are anywhere near that size who use tens of thousands of dollars worth of drugs a year? Plenty of guys are spending $30,000 on drugs and busting their ass in the gym who got 50 pounds less muscle than him. Do you really think it's just his specific training style at any given moment that got him there, or is it his genetic gifts? His genetic gifts combined with probably a pretty serious, intense drug stack. That's how he got there. And if you don't have his genetics and you can't afford his drug stack, why would you think that doing other stuff exactly like he did would produce even remotely similar results? Why would you assume it would even produce ideal results? It might not for you. And like I say to most people, you start talking about professional bodybuilders, a lot of them really and truly are ignorant about training. Like Bill Starr always said, who coached NFL players, he didn't think the average pro bodybuilder was qualified to instruct a high school football team in the weight room. That was his opinion as an actual real coach. And he didn't say all of them, he said the average one. And that probably holds true today. Probably holds true today too, even though that was in the past. Why wouldn't it? So the question becomes, when you look at someone like him, why would you want to emulate what he does when you know that most of what he did was through his genetics and drug stack and the training was a secondary part? And anyone who's in denial of that fact hasn't looked at the research and data. Everyone says things like, well, guys who are on drugs, certain amount of drugs, they still have to train really hard. No, actually they don't. The scientific evidence doesn't suggest that to be the case at all. In fact, their training plays a far more secondary role in how much muscle they gain than the doses of drugs they use. Let that sink in for a minute. If they were to go on a great training program versus just a decent one, but they doubled their drug dose, they would actually be bigger on the inferior training program. That's what the scientific evidence we can extrapolate from it says. Anyone who's in denial of that is in denial of those facts. That's the reality. Drug doses actually matter more than training style for gaining size when you're talking people who are heavily enhanced like that. And then again, I would ask the question of, why would you even want to emulate and utilize the training style of someone who has basically broken their back? Think that through for a minute. Is anything that you guys doing going to achieve the money or the fame or the greatness that he achieved by doing that? Probably not. Now, he argues that he feels he would do it all over again and would have went harder even after he was in a wheelchair talking about it. That's what he says outwardly, but don't you think deep down the guy does regret the fact that he's in a wheelchair? Now, if you start training like someone who has crippled themselves and destroyed their body with multiple back injuries, and then you suffer the consequences of trying to emulate them, but you don't get any of the benefits, you don't make millions of dollars, you don't make anything, you don't get any of these trophies, any of this recognition, and you're essentially a nobody still, and yet you've trained yourself incorrectly and to the point to where you're in a wheelchair and have cracked and damaged disc in your back. Can you honestly tell me that that's a good idea? Can you honestly say that that would make your life feel fulfilled in any way? Because I can promise you that it fucking won't. I can promise you when you're sitting in a wheelchair all fucked up and you don't have $1 million in the bank, in fact, you're probably broke at that point, but you don't have $1 million in the bank and a pile of trophies on the wall, you're probably going to feel pretty fucking stupid at that point. Think that one through, guys. Think that one through when you start imitating someone who you think was amazing and inspirational to you and want to emulate their methods. Stop and think some of that through. Furthermore, it's okay to use someone as motivation. I don't care who you use as motivation. That's fine. If Ronnie Coleman inspires you to train and get your ass to the gym so that you have a lower chance of getting cancer, so that you're healthier, so you have a lower chance of heart attack, stroke, diabetes, osteoporosis, all these things, if using Ronnie Coleman as motivation gets you to the gym, then by all means use him. But I sure as fuck wouldn't imitate the training methods of someone who's broken their back. Especially if you're not going to make $1 million like they did getting there. If you're doing it for hobby or for fun, having a fucking broken back really isn't worth it. Trust me on this one, guys. Alright, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.